Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and Sombrerian, issue number 1. And there will apparently be more of these, and I'm looking forward to reading them. This was a fun comic book. There's a independent comic book guy contacted me. He's like, hey, check this out. Sure, send it to me. Here you go. So I got to read it on Comixology, hence nothing in my hands, nothing up my sleeve, no sleeves. So you can get this on Comixology. I would say this is definitely worth it. All right. Talk about who made the comic book. We'll get into the comic book itself. We'll get into the things I liked and that I specifically didn't like. Let's get going. This is issue number 1, First Contact, created by and written by George Jiha, or Jiha, or I don't know, something like that. I hate butchering names, sorry. Art by Cheryl Chiang, probably butchered that too. Published by Cavalcad Comics Limited Liability Company. Copyright this year, 2019. You can go and check out cavalcade.com for more. I like the symbol. I like the logo. Wait a second. We're not there. We're talking about the things I like yet. So there's this guy, the Sombrerian, and he's got this bird. Keeps on saying, oh ho, which is actually kind of cool. At first you think it's annoying, and then pretty soon it's like, no, that's just the call of this bird. And I like that there's some consistency with this book. And that right there is the main point of consistency. No matter, like, we're going from trying to outrun a supermassive black hole through a galaxy to get to the other side, to all of a sudden being in the Milky Way on Earth. It's like, this is a weird book. And it's like, you know, they're in in the ocean, surrounded by water, big water, ocean water. There's a joke there. Executive order joke. And then they go and they land on shore. And it looks like it's an island, but it clearly is not an island because there's a freaking grizzly bear there. Big dead-eyed grizzly bear. Dude, this book is wild. And all of a sudden, pretty soon the guy's like stealing cars. This is a crazy comic book. Do not look for anything that's going to make sense in this comic book in that regard. No. The technology they're talking about, wrong. They talk about quantum tunneling. That's not quantum tunneling. But honestly, like, unless you're an engineer or, you know, like me, or you're just really into physics, you're not going to know that. So it's not that big of a deal. Honestly, it's just, you know, bombarded by gamma rays. I'm like, oh, the Hulk's going to be coming, because that's not real life. But in the comic books, that's exactly what happens. Gamma rays equal the Hulk. If you talk about gamma rays and you don't get the Hulk, you're sometimes disappointed. I was disappointed with this, but I saw it was not made by Marvel, so it's okay. I was expecting this. I'm being mostly silly, but make absolutely no mistake. I'm looking at this comic book. I'm looking at issue 2 when it comes out. This is really interesting. All right. So George Jiha, writer, creator. The writing in this book, mostly solid. Mostly solid. Again, aside from just throwing out, you know, real world names with not real equations for that, it's weird. Like, if you say quantum tunneling, actually do quantum tunneling. But whatever, it's fine. Here they just used this phasing. Somehow he phased through a windshield when in reality the windows were open. You could have just, but okay, that's fine. The Sombrerian is a shapeshifter. Very realistic form of shapeshifting in this book. I liked seeing this. He turns into a dolphin at one point. The head is the last thing to change. He's already swimming with the dolphins by the time that, his head starts to catch up with the rest of him. And then when he lands, he's walking his regular, hominid again, but his head is still in a dolphin shape. Like, I dig that. The shape-shifting starts from the bottom up like that. It's cool. It's just the way that works. That's cool. I dig on that. Mobility has to come first, right? But he actually, it's cool because he actually does some kind of an X-ray to really see what makes up this creature. Because it's not just the idea of changing the shape. You got to change the size of your bones. Some of your bones won't actually be bones anymore. Like if you turn into a shark, it'll be cartilage. The way that this worked was very scientifically believable. Until all of a sudden he shape changes into a deer and then starts talking. the vocal cords. Like, there's just no way. Anyway, that's why deer make those ridiculous noises sometimes, usually only when they're dying. It's hard for deer to make noises. They're not that squishy. All things concerned, though, the thing that really popped for me in a positive way in this book, the art. Cheryl Chiang, I get that, like, I don't know how much George G. has spent on the art for this book or anything else, but definitely worth it. Whatever was spent, definitely worth it. Cheryl did an amazing job in this. I mean, you know, is this something that would fit in with like a Marvel or a DC? Maybe, but undeniably, this is that step right before. Like, bet. You could read this comic book and you can look at this and you just see the detail in some of the art and some things purposely, that's the word, left open. And then on top of that, you see the backgrounds. And that's where all of a sudden the shining is coming out. There are artists. There are people who got into Marvel who were great artists. And I'm talking in the heyday, like the golden age and the silver age of comic books, where we were reading these things going, oh, what is this amazing stuff I'm reading? And they were just simply not interested in doing backgrounds at all. They hired background artists to come in just to do the backgrounds because the main artist was like, I'm just drawing the people. I don't care about backgrounds. You know what I'm saying? Color it blue, color it white, color it pink for all I care. This is the character. This is the action. Hey, look, here's a building. There's your background. Nah, man. they hired people just to do backgrounds. And here, Cheryl Chiang could be hired to do backgrounds today, in my opinion, over at Marvel or DC. And then slowly start working into drawing the regular characters and whatnot. I loved the way that this book was put together. All that being said, the characters, very personable. That is where George G. shines, making the characters believable, making them relatable, making it so that we understand and actually give a damn about these characters. There was a very famous guy, you may have heard of him, who excelled at that. His name was Stan Lee. Am I making that comparison? I'm making the comparison that comparison could one day be made. I love that I actually gave a rat's ass about these characters, especially when a character was named after a Mexican hat. Yeah, sombrero, seriously? Really? That's the name you came up with? Did you read that name? Did you wrote down the name and was just like, sombrero, I think I've heard that word before, but whatever, I'm going to say it's my word now. No. No. So the entire time I'm reading this, I'm just like, la cucaracha, like, you know, the tortilla chips on top with the salsa in the middle, and he gets some like little person walking around with, and he's like, hey, senor, would you like a chip? Like, that's all that's going through my mind the entire time I'm reading this freaking comic book, man. I'm just saying. But I really did like this book a lot. Can I complain about this book? Yes, and it's a solid complaint that needs to be addressed by the next issue. I'm not joking. It is the difference between a professional-looking book and this book. Because here's where we're talking about amateur hour. Here's where we're talking how I can tell in a heartbeat that this is not a major comic book company. This is not a minor comic book company. This is an off-the-map, off-the-grid comic book company. Because the lettering sucks. When I say sucks, I don't mean like it totally sucks. They're not necessarily all just boxes. There was actually some attempts to do some cool, you know, text boxes, word bubbles, whatever, when like you heard something over the radio. Really cute little designs and one. I don't know if that was a program that was used or if somebody just actually hand sketched that stuff out. But make no mistake, this New York Times, you know, 12-point font, whatever the hell it is that was used on here, 100% amateur hour. This is where you may notice that when I mentioned there was written by and art by and published by, did I by chance mention a letterer? No, I did not. I follow letterers. I care about the letterers. I care about what they do. Go and check out my it wasn't an interview, obviously. Artie Simek is dead, but I did a thing about Artie Simek, a profile on the person. One of Marvel's first letterers and probably one of the best letterers ever. Lettering is quite literally the thing that makes or breaks a comic book. People sometimes just don't get that. You can have a great story. You can have a good artist. You can have a whole bunch of different things. But, like with an art, you can say, oh, well, that was just my particular art style. You don't like it, somebody else will. And there's not much, ground there to argue against that. Somebody says, oh, well, the story, don't worry, the story will get better. Hold on, stay with me. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But you'll get somebody to come back. But the subconscious thing that all comic book readers, at least their unconscious mind notices, is the lettering. When the lettering looks amateurish, the whole comic book is brought straight down. This comic book was clearly not an Image, a Dynamite, an Antarctic Press, an Ahoy. It was nothing. This comic book is clearly an amateur comic book. If we were to go out and get, let's say, can we afford a Troy Pateri from A Larger World? Can we afford VC, like the Clayton Cowles and all those? Can we afford a Clayton Crane? Who can we afford? Who can we afford to get? Can we go to one of the smaller comic book companies that can't afford to actually, sign guys on to do lettering permanently for them? Can we find someone who's actually a skilled letterer? Because I promise you, issue 2, if it has an actual letterer on the comic book, I bet this comic book doubles in its relatability and the ability for the reader to relate to what they're reading. This suddenly becomes a much more professional comic book. The lettering, or I should say the lack thereof in this comic book, the entire time I knew that I was reading an amateur comic book by somebody who, for the most part, has never done a comic book before or just hasn't gotten it yet. We need a letterer on this comic book. And that's it. Suddenly, boom, the investment in this comic book doubles, possibly more. Everything is here except the lettering. Maybe that's too much talking about lettering. Maybe we've learned something. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.